So 9 days ago, I posted a video on the Hawks being upset that they were rebuilding. My take at the time was, well, we don't know for sure that they're rebuilding. They haven't come out and said it. Now they have. So here's a message they sent to Blackhawks fans. They sent this out on Twitter. We recently said goodbye to a pair of popular two-time champions and acquired some new players via trade and via free agency. We understand it was tough to see those respected veterans go and realize you may have some questions about our direction. We'd like to address the direction and share why we're hopeful for the future of Blackhawks hockey. We're committed to developing young players and rebuilding our roster. We want more than another window to win. We want to reach the summit again and stay there. An effort that will require a stockpile of emerging talent to complement our top players. The influx of youth and the progression will provide roster flexibility and depth throughout our lineup. We were already the youngest team in the 2020 playoffs, and several Blackhawks experienced that intensity for the first time. This will help to further establish a culture that embraces the grind of improvement, driven by competitors who are relentless, engaged, and motivated by a team-first mentality to win. As our young players develop and learn how to win consistently, they'll make some mistakes. Inevitably, we'll miss the mark sometimes too, but we'll communicate openly with you on this journey together. We know that what comes next must be more than just words, and that inspires us. Let's see what the top responses on Twitter are. Never cheering for this pathetic organization again. Give me a call when you're a contender once again. No need to explain. We got better in defense and sent away a few of the 100 offensive players we have in terms of streamlining our star rooks to the forefront for the first time on ice. Win-win to most who understand hockey. As a Rangers fan, this would be the right move. You may not trust management, but neither did we. But look where we are now. This will be great for Chicago down the road. The word pain repeatedly, that's in there. Which, I have to say, if winning 3 Stanley Cups in the last 10 years means pain, this is terrible, pain. Hi, I would cheer for the Canucks. So, as a Rangers fan, it was the best decision we've ever made. Best of luck. So, a bunch of Rangers fans come in and go, don't worry, it's fine. This letter, everything's great. But it's interesting because, they trade out Brandon Saad and they bring in Nikita Zadorov, and I understood why they did it. And they let go of Corey Crawford, and again, I kind of understood that. This is not a roster that's built as a rebuild yet. So one thing to keep in mind is, yes, it's been 9 days since we last discussed it. So I'm like, all right, I got to make sure that I'm approaching this from a different angle than I did 9 days ago, or else we're in the same spot. But since the team's made it clear that they're doing a rebuild, we can do that. 2021, for the record, they have draft picks in rounds 1 and 2. They don't have one in round 3. And then they have draft picks in rounds 4 through 7. They only have one draft pick in each round. So if a team is really and truly doing a rebuild, they will get more than one draft pick per round. Unless they're Vancouver. But they never officially rebuilt, right? So we never got a letter saying, we're bad, we're going to get better. And it's interesting because when you look at the 21 and under crowd, you have Kirby Dach, who will look fantastic in the playoffs, not going to lie. Adam Boqvist, who should be solid on the blue line. Then you have Ian Mitchell coming in. Nicholas Beaudin is coming in as well. And, of course, the recently drafted Lucas Reichel, who we can project will be in this lineup, 2 years from now, probably? So, Dach and Boqvist are good for another 2 years contract-wise. Mitchell and Beaudin are 2023, but again, that's if they play this year. Then their contracts expire in 2023, and then there's that sliding aspect if they don't use up that first year of a contract and all that wonderful stuff. But that's their 21 and under crowd when you're looking at prime guys, in my eyes anyways. There may be a couple other prospects you could throw in there, but a majority of this roster is between ages 22 and 27, which is when guys are generally coming into their prime or in their prime. Alex DeBrincat is signed for another 2 years. They're counting on a bounce-back year from him. Dominic Kubalik, 2022, he's due. And, of course, he had a fantastic rookie season for them. Matthias Janmark was just brought in on a 1-year contract. David Kampf has developed into a pretty good bottom 6 option. He's due up next year as well. I believe that's RFA. Lucas Wallmark's RFA next year as well. 2021 is when he's due. So Wallmark was just brought in. And I think this isn't a bad roster. Now, the interesting part comes in with Alex Nylander. Nylander is due next year. He's an RFA. Has he done enough to be an NHL player? Not yet. Have they lost faith in him? Not yet. Are they close? You'd have to ask Chicago management how close they are. It definitely looks like the trading of Yoki Haru. While you can argue, yes, Yoki Haru being traded was something that they just didn't have room for him on the blue line, but in getting Nylander back, that may end up being a mistake and may be seen that way sooner rather than later. You could argue it now. You can try. Matthew Highmore has 2 years on his contract before he's RFA as well. Highmore I like, but he's bottom six, strictly. Dylan Strome, of course, is a restricted free agent right now, and this is a team that sits a little less than $6 million away from the salary cap. Strome, there had been talks here and there about whether or not maybe they might dangle out there, might trade him. I don't think so, but it would depend on what he gets this offseason. Connor Murphy has 2 years left on his contract. Nikita Zadorov, of course, who they brought in and signed for a 1-year contract. He's RFA at the end of that as well. And I like Zadorov. Nick Seeler has 1 more year left in his contract. Colin Delia and Malcolm Subban are both signed for 2 more years, as is Kevin Lankinen. So they have 3 goaltenders who are between the ages of 22 and 27. Delia and Subban are 26. Lankinen's 25. And as I said the last time I talked about Chicago, you have to decide, okay, so are Delia and Lankinen going to be NHL level goaltenders? If your answer is yes, now's the time to give them that chance at ages 26 and 25. Or else you're basically not going to see them in the National Hockey League. Because past that point, you just basically go to Europe for most of these guys. Lankinen, especially, I would think, would lean towards Europe at the end of this contract if he hasn't got what he feels is a fair shot at playing for the Hawks. So the 28-plus group is what you're going to look at, because we're going to look at the Rangers. So, the Rangers, they sold off Zuccarello. They sold off other pieces of that team as well. They weren't shy when it came to buyouts and moving guys out. And you could argue they're still doing that. That Mark Stahl being traded out was to save cap space, and it's also as the team keeps getting younger. So if Chicago's going to do that, this is where the uncomfortable conversations are going to be had. Keep in mind, this season they had 72 points. They were 7th in the Central Division. 18th in goals for, 21st in goals against. Last year, 84 points. They were 6th in the Central Division. 8th in goals for, 30th in goals against. The season prior to that, the first season they're outside the playoffs, 76 points, 7th in the Central, 22nd in goals for and 22nd in goals against. The reason this is noteworthy is because now they're sending out a notice, we're going to try rebuilding. That probably should have started in 2018. In reality, Chicago should have been in sell and rebuild mode in 2018. They weren't. Because again, a team that's been in the playoffs and one of the best teams for a while, when you have that 1 year outside the playoffs, you can kind of shrug and go, but we think we're still a playoff team. We don't think we're that far off. And that's happened numerous places where a team might hold on a little bit too long and then it gets a little bit difficult. Now, in their 28-plus group, this is where things do get difficult because it's a very expensive group here. Patrick Kane is signed through 2023. I don't see him going anywhere. And again, he's 31 years of age, but I don't see Chicago making a trade with Kane. And not only that, but who has the money to bring in a $10.5 million contract? Not very many. And teams that have that cap space likely aren't looking to bring somebody. As great as Patrick Kane is in this economy, it's not there. Jonathan Toews, same contract till 2023. And Toews might be the guy. If we're looking for somebody who might say, yeah, I'm willing to leave, it might be Toews. Toews was the one that was really choked about the fact they weren't consulted about going into a rebuild when they sold off Saad. Which, again, I don't see losing Brandon Saad as meaning that's it. We're blowing it all up. Saad's contract's up next year. So it's possible they weren't looking at keeping him around long term and they were going to trade him out anyways. And I don't think Saad is the reason they are or they're not a contender when you see them outside of the playoffs 3 years in a row. Zach Smith is up next year. Yeah, they might sell him off. You're not getting a first-round pick for Zach Smith. Ryan Carpenter's up in 2 years. Do you trade Carpenter? Again, you're not going to get a big return on Carpenter. Duncan Keith has 3 more years left on his contract. So if somebody was going to pick up Duncan Keith, again, it's a high cap hit. He's an older player. And I'm not sure what the market would be with Duncan Keith. Calvin DeHaan, 2 years left for him. If they decided to sell Duncan or Calvin DeHaan, you're probably going to get more bites with him than with Duncan Keith. But DeHaan's only 29, so I'm not sure if Chicago's going to look to sell him. They didn't bring him in that long ago. Brent Seabrook, of course, has 4 years left in his contract. They've tried to move it. They just couldn't find a taker when they tried to move it. I would think he's still on the block. If somebody calls Chicago, they would definitely listen to offers on Seabrook. I just don't know how that works. And that leaves you with Andrew Shaw, who's signed through 2022. He's dealing with concussion symptoms. I don't know there's a market there either. So the big difference for me, if I'm looking at the New York Rangers and what they've done, if I'm looking at what Chicago's got right now, the players who would have market value are still young players, and I don't think Chicago's going to be looking to trade these guys. The veterans either A, wouldn't want to get traded, or B, because of their contracts, they're virtually untradeable. And even Patrick, I love Patrick Kane. Are you kidding me? If somebody said, hey, would you like Patrick Kane on the Canucks? Oh, I'd love Patrick Kane playing up front for the Canucks. They don't have the money. They just don't. So if the question became, would you like to see them trade for him? No, because I don't want to see what kind of hoops they'd have to jump through, A, to get Kane, and B, to make it work under a flat cap for the next couple of years. So Chicago coming out and saying, well, things are going to be bad. To me, looking at this roster, looking at this makeup, all it is it's a way of them telling their fan base, this could be a bad year. So we're just letting you know up front, the 2020-2021 season could be a long one, and we really can't fix it. Because, again, they don't have a ton of draft picks next year, considering this is supposed to be a rebuild now. So they're counting on Doc to make that step. Boquist, Mitchell, and Bowden to start to build this blue line, and they're just telling their fans basically, buckle up. This could be a rough couple of years. But the fans should already expect this because they've already been at or near the bottom of the division for the last 3 seasons. It's bizarre. But again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, because if you're a Hawks fan and if you're able to sell off these veterans, or does somebody in their prime between ages 22 and 27, do they get moved out? Does this mean that they're already willing to go, well, we can't move our veterans, maybe we move DeBrincat? Like, how far is this going to go? And that's a question I have for everybody out there watching now. If DeBrincat was on the block, I would think there'd be a lot of teams calling. But because DeBrincat had a slow season, they might just offer a little bit less to Chicago than what Chicago would want. It's going to get interesting. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the Blackhawks and their statement of today that they're officially rebuilding. And then, how does that work? How do they make this work? Who can they trade? And how do they make it work? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.